Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome to our show. We have gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the multiverse, two of the nerdiest geeks to be found. We proudly present the professor and her geeky girlness herself, Ace. And now it's time. GeekyKOOL presents Professor and Ace.
Hey everybody, welcome back to GeekyKOOL Presents. I'm the professor. This here is Ace, right there. We've missed a couple of weeks because of illness. First AJ got sick, then I got sick, but we're all better. So we're back, and we're happy to be back. And as we had mentioned on our last show, we're going to actually talk about movies, some of those important movies that we love because we're both movie geeks. And we actually took a block now. Maybe we should have broke it down more, AJ. I'm not sure, but
so hard.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, the 20s is one thing because there wasn't a lot of non-silent movies. Like the talkies really did make a big splash until the late 20s.
Right.
So I was like, okay, we can conclude the 20s in with the 30s, but the 30s themselves drove me crazy trying to get like my list down.
I understand, and I think I could have done 5 pretty easily in the 20s and 5 in the 30s, but that's okay. We'll break it down what we've got, and if we've got time, we can give some of those extra ones we've got, because I think you've got some extras and I've got some extras also.
Yeah. And I'm not even gonna lie, Professor, my list that I found, because I made this list 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The list I found has all my extras, so I'm not even sure which ones I sent you. I'm like trying to look through.
Well, if you tell me what the name is, if I have a picture, we'll put it up, because I did that early. If not, I can go get one.
Because I'm not even sure.
Oh goodness.
Which one it was. I think it was on text that I sent you the list, and I'm looking on my Facebook Messenger and I'm like, nope, it's not there. So let's see if I can figure it out if it was on text.
That's funny.
I have my old phone and then I have my new phone, and so I literally am like just doing this, like I'm gonna scroll through and so yeah.
I think you must. I don't know. Anyway, all right. So, well, let's go with one of the ones on your list, and we'll talk about it. And if we get a picture, great. If not, I'll go get one. So.
Okay. So why don't we start with some of the ones from the 20s? So the 1920s, guys, is really the birth of cinema as we know it, and there are so many iconic movies that came out in the 20s that if you're a movie buff, you really should see, just so you have that in your, like, feather in your cap kind of thing.
Right.
And, so some of the ones from the 20s that, like, I didn't put on my list, hardly any, I didn't put any Charlie Chaplin or Errol Flynn or any of those, even though they're amazing. They just didn't make my list. But the ones from the 20s that did make my list are, to me, very important because I'm not a huge horror fan, but I appreciate the art of horror making to the point that I understand what goes into it, and especially back then, before you had CGI, before you had computers, and it was all done with makeup effects. And so in the 1920s, I'm gonna start with my man Lon Chaney, and I'm going to talk about 1923, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and 1925, The Phantom of the Opera. So yeah, those two are huge. Lon Chaney, his makeup special effects, he developed techniques to transform himself into these characters that were used until the 80s and 90s, and are still used, but with different materials now that we have, like, different materials that are available to us. But without him, horror makeup and makeup in general and cinematic effects might not have been where they were, because back in the day, back in the 1920s, they didn't have makeup artists. They didn't have special effect artists. They literally, Charlie Chaplin went into a costume area, got his whole costume together, and did all of it himself. Lon Chaney did all of his makeup for his iconic characters himself. If you guys haven't seen these, I know I have friends who won't see silent movies. I get it. I'm not that person, but I understand it. I also have friends who won't watch black and white movies, which I think is just completely takes away from some of the most amazing movies ever. But if you're a true fan of cinematic history and movies, look up Lon Chaney and look up some of his iconic roles and watch them. Even if you don't thoroughly enjoy them, understand that this is a time when we didn't have makeup artists and stuff. The actors put on their own makeup and everything. So that's a big deal. They're also just amazing. I think The Hunchback of Notre Dame is considered, in my opinion, is one of the best silent films ever made. The Phantom of the Opera from 1925, if you look in the U.S. National Film Registry, it is considered one of the benchmark horror performances. It's been added to the National Film Registry because of what it brought to the table. So 1920s, I think if you're going to look up any movies from the 1920s, Lon Chaney movies, the horror movies are a great place to start. I have two others from the 1920s that I just want to throw out there. And that is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which was 1920 with John Barrymore. And yes, he is related to Drew Barrymore. There's all of them. There's Lionel, John, but it was such an amazing role. It was 1920, so it was really when the early onset of movies came out. And
that one is
yes, and it's also he did his own makeup, but if you think about it, he was classically trained. It's stage, but it's a completely different beast being on a movie set than stage, and he adapted so well to it. And that role is just one of my favorites from the silent movie film era. So,
well, and I want to bring up the Phantom of the Opera because I didn't have that. So let me do that real quick. So there, Phantom of the Opera. So look at that face. I mean, that's very different than what we think of as Phantom of the Opera now with the half mask.
Oh yeah,
it's a very different.
Yeah, and they didn't do it wasn't the romantic Andrew Lloyd Webber Phantom of the Opera. When people think of Phantom of the Opera now, they think of the musical that Andrew Lloyd Webber wrote for Broadway. This was not that. This is a horror story. And all of that makeup that you see and his face, if you ever look up Lon Chaney, he is not an attractive man to begin with. But that is all prosthetics that he developed the way to change the whole form of his face. And it's just an amazing thing. And yeah, he is one of those actors who was so much more than just an actor. And without him, we wouldn't have developed half of the techniques, or we would have, but it might have been a long time. But he developed so many techniques in such a short time frame that it pushed the cinematic special effects so far ahead. That's why we're where we are now with them. So he is just amazing. If you guys don't know anything about him, watch his show, watch his movies, and then also learn about him because he was a pioneer in that whole industry. So,
well, and that's really awesome because they didn't have anything. So they were trying to come up with stuff on the fly. They were looking at what could make me fit in this role. The actors were doing a lot of that themselves. I mean, you have the director. That I realized after we set this time frame that is it Journey to the Moon where they shoot the rocket to the eye of the moon? That was actually in the 19 teens. So
Yes.
it actually predates this. And I've seen that one also, and that's a classic. It's interesting. I mean, just to watch movies being made then.
Well, because
but
it was, you think about it when you think like stop motion type
Right.
of thing, but it wasn't stop motion back then. It was literally them trying to figure out. And the behind the scene photos, there are photos from that movie
Yeah.
that show you the sets. The sets alone were just so fantastical. They were just, it's hard for us to grasp around, like, imagine somebody comes to you and says, hey, you've never seen a moving picture. This what we're doing right now. Like, they couldn't
Right.
grasp that. But a moving picture, like, we can take your picture and you can move. And they had been out for a while, not a huge amount of time.
No.
Like, they'd been out for decades, but only the really wealthy could have them. But to make it an entertainment type of thing was a whole new situation. And they were developing all kinds of techniques to try to bring entertainment to the masses. And that, it's like the development of the printing press.
Right. Right.
It's that iconic of a thing, and people don't think of it like that. But without moving pictures, without developing those things for entertainment, we wouldn't also have the things that they brought newsreels to, and they have those things. So no, it's great. I love that show, by the way, that movie, by the way. With the
that's I know that one's really cool. I was kind of disappointed because that was on. I'm like, I'm going to pick that one. I'm like, oh, that predated the 20s even. So
I would have let you keep it, man.
Well, but I know. But so that is a cool one. We did bring it up and talk about it. So there you go. Well, let me give you some of mine from the 20s because I think we did a little differently. I made a top 5 with all, but then I included a bunch of extra. But
yes.
Two of my top 5 are from the 20s.
Very cool.
So yeah, first one being also very much a historical and very important horror movie.
Okay.
Our first attempt at vampires.
Right.
No, I have no idea how to say because I think it's French. It's Nosferatu.
Yes,
and
right.
Wow, that's incredible. But the really interesting thing in this movie is they wanted to do Dracula, but they couldn't because they couldn't get the rights from Bram Stoker's family to let them do Dracula movie. And of course, later, because this was 1922. By 1931, they did allow a Dracula movie to be made, which is also, it's very, very good. Bela Lugosi, it's in my extended list. I didn't make my top 5, but it's a very good movie. So you've got that, but this was our first real look at vampires, and I've watched this one and followed along. This thing is scary.
Well, and that's the thing. It's it was when they made horror movies. Like, it's kind of the same aspect as the Phantom of the Opera. They made horror movies to scare people.
Right.
They didn't romance. It wasn't about side stories. It wasn't about romance. It was about scaring people. And to this day, that iconic look of a vampire is still what a lot of people build off of.
Right.
For pure horror. No, I'm not talking about the sparkly vampires from Twilight. By the way, I don't know if I told you this. I think I brought it up on the 24-hour podcast thing, or 24-hour live thing we did. Over the summer, Lost Boys was at the movie theater, and I went to see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know, because I have friends who were like so upset that Stephenie Meyer made vampires sparkly. She did not. Do you know in Lost Boys? Because I had only seen Lost Boys on a TV screen. I had never
really
seen it when they go and the Frog Brothers kill the one vampire in the cave, and they're covered in what you think is goo. On the big screen, that is glitter.
Huh.
They are glittery vampires.
Well, I saw that in the theater, but it's been many moons since I've seen it there. So that's interesting. No, I did not know that.
We were sitting there, and I go, they're glittery. And Shmoo was like, what? And I was like, Stephanie Meyer did not bring up glittery vampires. Those are glittery. And then they walk out, they're running through the cave, and they walk out into the sunlight, and it's just full on glitter all over their bodies. So vampires bleed glitter in Lost Boys too. So I'm just bringing that up.
Yes, but Lost Boys is better.
I thought it was a fun little thing, but no, the vampires. The thing is like we are so inundated with like horror things now. It's very hard to scare us without gore, or at least people who make movies think that. Back then, these things were terrifying.
Right.
And if you go back and watch it, some people will find it kooky. Some people will be like, oh, that's so cheesy. But go back and watch it with the mindset that you haven't seen Freddy and Jason and all of those. That you have literally never seen a horror movie ever, and watch this and think about how you would have reacted. These things were very, very scary, and they are fundamentally the foundation of all horror films today.
Well, I would even say go and watch it in the dark late at night, even on your television screen.
Yeah.
To me, I don't get scared by blood and gore. Actually, that usually takes me out of that. But the whole drama leading up to it, that's what gets me. So it's the intensity and the thrilling part that gets my blood running. The blood and gore actually kind of removes that away from it a lot of times. So, but no, I found this movie is awesome. Even though you have to go back and you're watching it, and it's not only is it black and white, but it's not, it's a silent film, and it's popping up there. You're going to have to read what they're saying anyway, because it's French. So
yeah, that's the thing also is subtitles. Like I know a lot of people are against movies with subtitles. There are times and places where I just can't do subtitles. Like if I'm busy, I'm not going to sit there and like, I want to hear it and everything.
Right.
But I challenge everyone who's never seen a movie with subtitles and stuff to find a genre you like from this silent film or foreign films the genre you like, and watch it, because reading it, if you're a big book nerd like me, reading it and having a visual at the same time is a really unique experience. So I liked it.
It definitely can be. For me, my challenge is being, not only ADD, but also dyslexic. I've got a challenge. So then I focus on what the words are saying, and I miss what's going on the screen a lot of times. So I have to be careful. If it's something that I can, I don't have to read everything word for word and just kind of get the sense of what's going on, I'm good. Crouching Tiger was a great one that way. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's an interesting experience. But not everybody's experience, unfortunately, can be great with subtitles. But a silent movie, I mean, because it takes the silent part. They tell you the words outside of the action, so it's actually popping up there. So it will tell you, so you're not missing anything by reading it.
It's very much like watching a comic book moving picture.
Yeah.
How a lot of them are. They will show you the pictures of actions, and then it'll pop up a screen, like a whole new screen that'll just have the words, or what they're doing, or something like that. So it's a unique thing. I actually really enjoy silent movies. I know a lot of people don't, but I actually really do. So
a good silent movie at the right time is perfect. I don't want it for every day, but if I know I'm going in, especially if I get to do it with somebody else that enjoys it also, it's a wonderful change of pace. Yes. So my number one on my list from the 20s and 30s was a silent movie. Okay. And I was surprised it did not make your list. And maybe you haven't seen it. No, it's late 20s, but it's 1927. Yes.
It's on my list, but I figured it would be on yours. No,
Definitely.
Let's see. Yeah, it's
Metropolis.
on my list right there. I didn't bring it up because I figured it would be on your list, being the first sci-fi movie ever.
Yeah. Well, not only is it sci-fi, it's dystopian future.
Yes.
So, so you get pretty much any sci-fi is based off of this movie. Any sci-fi movie has its roots here, but you also have all the dystopian future movies. So Hunger Games doesn't happen without this movie. No. Road Warrior doesn't happen without this movie. So it's interesting because it's actually, and a good sci-fi movie does that. It crosses genres, but it is now it's bizarre.
It's so crazy.
It's
one of those movies that you're watching it and you're like, am I really watching what I think I'm watching? I feel like it's some crazy guy's dream.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's exactly what it is. But the costumes. Let's talk about costumes, because you know me, I'm a fashion girl. I love costumes in movies, and I will focus on the costumes. If the movie's really bad and the costumes are good, I will at least be able to be entertained by it. The costumes and the makeup for this movie
yes,
are so, even to today's standards, were not bad.
No.
You got to think about this. This is 1927. The makeup and the costumes really make a metallic humanoid look, and that is a big thing. I've tried to make metallic humanoid looking, like robot looking clothes, and that's a very difficult thing even today.
Right.
They did it so well. She was so stunning in that.
She is.
I can't think of her name. Oh, Larry, what is her name? I will figure
it
out.
I didn't write it down, so yeah.
I've done things on her before. I've like researched her and stuff, and she's so beautiful. But
she is. The other thing that's really the other thing I really like about it is the set design. The set design is incredible, and the haves and the have-nots, and the whole differences in the working class people versus the regular class people. Yeah.
And it's a German. She's a German actress. It was the brainchild of a German director. But no, the sets, the story. What's really cool is it's one of those stories that is so relevant no matter what time you watch it. No matter what. You can find things in this story that are relevant to today. Or
yes, you sure can.
Or to the 40s, or to, and I find that the movies that I have on my list, and I know the movies that you have on your list, that is the thing that threads it together, is that they're not timeless. Like one of the movies that didn't make my list and you were surprised by was a 1930s movie, and it's on my long list, but it didn't make my short list. And you know which one I'm talking about. It is not a timeless movie. People will tell you it's a timeless movie. And I'll just tell you guys, it's Gone with the Wind. Cinematically, that movie is beautiful. It's stunning. The costumes are amazing. The acting is spot on. However, it is politically not timeless in any sense of the word. And it doesn't necessarily paint a wrong picture. It paints a picture from a perspective of a young girl in that time period, in that place.
Right.
So her perspective is skewed anyway.
She's
a teenage girl. So if you take it to that point, that movie is beautiful. And that movie, and a lot of people might hate on me for this, because I do know it is not politically correct. I do know that, though, that Hattie McDowell won the first Oscar for an African-American actress for her supporting role in that movie. That was a huge, amazing, leap forward. I do feel like, they should have had more movies that African American actors and actresses could have played non, submissive, servient roles. But it wasn't the time back then that it is now. So it's not timeless. But if you go back and watch that movie, if you can get through it, and I've gone through it so many times, it's like one of my favorites. If you can watch it, because it's really long, and you just pick those iconic fashion, the iconic roles that and my favorite characters are not the main characters. Like Clark Gable, I like Clark Gable. He is not one of my favorite actors of all time. He is just, he's okay to me. And, Vivian Leigh is stunning. I know why she was cast as Scarlett O'Hara, but Olivia de Havilland, and I have a thing for Olivia de Havilland. I know you do too, because I know one of your favorite movies is a 1940s movie that Olivia de Havilland starred in. But she as Melanie was amazing, and you go back and you dissect her acting chops in that movie, and it's amazing. I am so glad that the person who they wanted to play Vivian Leigh was the fan favorite, like fan wanting, and that was Bette Davis, and I think she would have been terrible as Scarlett O'Hara. She was supposed to be Scarlett O'Hara. She would not have been a good Scarlett.
No, she is great in the role she's cast in. She's a great actress, and her eyes are so encompassing. I mean, but yeah, I don't know. She's a good Scarlett. Yeah,
some of her movies almost made my list, but they didn't quite. I feel like Bette Davis has her own list. Like I have to make my own Bette Davis list because I love some of her movies. But so just know, guys, when you're listening to us, we realize that some of our movies that we're picking do not translate to the modern times, and now we're picking them for certain reasons. And then there's some of them that do translate. So
right. Well, and with Gone with the Wind, if you're trying to do a accurate portrayal of what it's like to be in the South at the end of Civil War, I don't know that was wrong. I think it's pretty. I mean, there's things that are wrong with it for that, but overall, I think the characters are pretty fitting for the accuracy of the time.
I think the thing that people have the hardest time with is that they say that the slaves, being like Hattie McDowell's character and the foreman and all of them, that they would not have stayed after emancipation with the O'Haras. The problem with that is that history shows us that some of them did. They started getting paid and everything, but they didn't know any better in their lives. They didn't know anything, or they were too old, or whatever.
Well, and if you're born into slavery, if that's all you've known, and you've learned through the process that this is how you behave to keep from getting beaten, and to have that comfortable bed, and to have that meal every day, you do those things because that's how you've been trained to survive.
And the truth of the matter is that mammies, and that was their term for the slave nursemaids who took care of children, they would get attached to the children. They would raise these children as their own. So they get attached to them. And then they were emancipated. A lot of them were still so attached to the children that they had raised. Even considering the children owned them, in their mind, they were still attached. And, politically, it is a hot mess. But at the time that movie is portraying, the country was a hot mess because of that.
It definitely was a hot mess. Yeah.
And people were like, well, they make it seem so like romantic and beautiful and stuff. But like I said earlier, it is the perspective of Scarlett O'Hara. Scarlett O'Hara in the start of that movie is a late teenage girl. She's in her late teens, say 16, 17, somewhere around there. She is romanticizing everything. She's beautiful. She likes fashion. She doesn't have brothers. She only has sisters. You know, she doesn't, you know, she doesn't grasp the world around her. And
Right.
so
Right.
does romanticize really horrible situations and doesn't delve into things like Roots did with like the
Right.
American
Right.
point of view. But it was written based on Scarlett O'Hara's point of view, and she was
Right.
a white, rich, privileged, spoiled, beautiful teenage girl who got everything she ever wanted. And that's her story. And everybody has their stories. And that's the thing, is like, that's one of the reasons I like it, is because, you know, I don't relate to Scarlett O'Hara.
Right.
I relate to Miss Melanie a lot more.
Right.
And you know, there are other people I relate to a lot more in that. I relate more to Scarlett's sisters,
Right.
Scarlett. But
Right.
but that's just the beauty of storytelling. So
No, I agree. And that actually made number 2 on my list, just because of the iconic nature of it, the beauty of how it's shot. The acting is phenomenal as a whole in that. And again, you're looking at how are you portraying these white slave owners at this time that really didn't understand what was wrong with what they were doing. And this is all they've known. This is what they've known in life. And she's a teenage girl. And so, yeah, it's a fascinating movie. So it's 4 hours long. Actually, it's just under 4 hours long, but
like
it's
3 hours and 49 minutes or something.
I think it's 58. I think it's 3:58 or something. I think so.
Well, I
So
don't know if they count the intermission. I always fast forward to the intermission.
oh yeah. That's a good question. Oh, and my notes do say 3:58, but it may be part of the intermission, maybe part of that. But yeah.
So it's close to 4 hours
all right.
long. Yeah. I'm glad that you had that on your list. See, you had 2 on your list that made my long list but didn't make my short list. So.
Well, and those 2 are 1 and 2 on my list. Which is interesting. So all right. So what else do we got? So you've given us 20s, and actually, the really interesting thing, I'll say this: when I went through sort of looking at movies, because I've seen a lot of movies from the 20s and 30s. I've seen a lot more of the 40s and 50s, 60s. So I'm very versed in those.
Yes.
But I got looking through this and going, I've never seen this. I've never seen this. I really want to see this. I can't believe I've not seen this. And so I've got a list of about 15 movies, a lot of them from the 20s, that I really want to see, including the original Scarface, which I did not realize that Scarface was a remake.
And that's the other thing, is like a lot of people love certain movies and they have no idea that they are remakes.
Right.
The same stories have been told over and over and over in Hollywood. Yes, some of them get
true. Right.
Change, and they update some. But yeah, no, Scarface is not. That was not the original. The original is from the 1920s. It's real. You would like it a lot. It's really interesting to watch. I grew up in a house with a grandmother who I actually lived with, and so she encouraged, like, when we got cable, we didn't get cable till I was older, but when we got cable, grandmother paid extra for Turner Classic Movie Channel just so I could experience that. And so I've watched a lot. Like, I was going through, and Shpoo he does not watch classic movies. I'm going to try to get him to.
He should.
He'll watch some of them. He's like, he'll watch, like, he's watched some of the horror ones. He likes Lon Chaney. He likes Price. He likes, but he doesn't necessarily watch the non-horror ones. And some of them are some of my favorites. So I'm hoping either that or you and I need to get together and have like a old movie night and just watch.
I love that idea. So I'm game for that also. So yeah, but yeah, I found it fascinating because I went through and started looking at lists. I'm like, okay, so because I knew kind of in my head, here are some of the iconic ones that I've seen that I know are great that I need on my list. And then I got looking, and I'm like, man, I can't believe I've not seen this. So I have a pretty good list I need to watch. So that's actually very exciting for me. So
you should send me that, and I bet I've seen most of them. And then I'll let you know like which ones you should start with.
Okay, yeah. I can do that. I'm really interested in just, we're off the subject here, but the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
Yeah, I can never say it either, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. So that one looks really interesting, and that's actually considered to be the first horror movie. So
it was it's not as the special effects and makeup are not what they need, but it is, if you go back and watch it, it is one that you should watch. Because if you go back and watch it with just these eyes that no one had ever made a horror movie before, ever, and you watch the movie, you can see, and the sense. The thing about it is, I would love to have a movie theater that would play them the way they used to be played, these silent movie horror movies, or even silent movies, because they used to have sheet music that they would send to the movie theater, and they had a piano in front or in the back. My grandmother said hers was always in the front. They would have a piano and a piano player who would play sheet music to the movie. They had a soundtrack that wasn't added to the movie itself. It was literally, you enjoyed live music playing to a movie. And I would have loved that, because I think I know soundtracks sometimes can make movies. And I heard that one, my grandmother talked to me about that one, and she said that one had it creeped her out. I do remember she said she had to walk home from the movie theater after seeing that one. And she was so scared that every time a car drove by, and she lived in the middle of Kansas City, every time a car drove by or the trolley drove by, she would freak out.
Right.
So,
well, I get that. Have you seen Watchmen on HBO yet?
No, we just got HBO Max, so we've been doing.
Right, I knew you had. That's why I was kind of asking. So I just finished watching it since I was out sick for a week, sleeping and then watching TV pretty much the rest of the time. I watched that whole thing, and interestingly, talking about the silent movie, the playing at the front of the theater plays a big part in that series. So.
Oh. Well, then, I mean, it is on my list. It's just not something I've gotten to yet.
Right. Oh, so since you were talking about that, I just thought I'd mention that, because I'm like, yeah, you will like that, because that really brings that home. So, yeah. So, all right. So let's jump on to the 30s then. What do we've got there? I know there's a long list in the 30s, but
I have a few. Let's start with we're gonna start with the earliest one from the 1930s, and this one is, I love Godzilla and King Kong, and they both came out recently. I love the new King Kong and Godzilla, but the very first King Kong from 1930.
Yep.
That one.
That one's great.
You look at it and you see, I mean, it is not if you try to put it against a modern take on King Kong and the CGI and the graphics and stuff, it's not great. But if you take it for what it was, the monster movies came out in the 30s and the 40s are so beautiful. I am a huge movie monster fan. I love the Universal monsters. I love, King Kong, Godzilla, Mothra. I love all of them. That one is one that I remember. I think I was 8 or 9 years old, and we had just gotten our beta.
Right.
Remember beta?
Betamax. Oh yeah.
Betamax.
Oh yeah.
And we were renting movies from a place up here by where I live now, but it was a little ways away from our house. And that was one of the ones they had. And my mom freaked out because she loved the monsters. And we took it home, and my sister hated it because it wasn't, she's like, it's so fake looking and all of this stuff. But I just remember thinking, it's so amazing in what they did. And King Kong, for being something that wasn't CGI'd and couldn't actually expression. He doesn't emote any expression in that movie, his face, but you still feel for him.
You do.
That is just beautiful directing.
Yeah.
That is beautifully directed movie. Because it's hard to imagine, like, now we feel for the monsters because they give us emotion in their face and they CGI can change like the emotion. Then it was literally like a clay figure kind of thing, and they were, and yet the way it's directed and filmed, and the scope of how it's filmed, like
Yes.
how they're filmed, and all the little details make you feel for King Kong. So 1933 King Kong, I think it will always live in my heart as my favorite King Kong. And I love Kong.
Yeah.
I love Godzilla. Mothra's my girl. Mothra's my favorite.
And when we get to the 50s, we'll be able to talk about her.
I know. But that one, I think, is the reason I love them so much. So,
well, and I will say number 3 on my list. Number 3. So this is the interesting thing. So my exposure to King Kong was, we were out to eat in the 70s when, I don't know if it was a made-for-TV movie or what it was, but it was a 70s King Kong movie with, Lane.
I'm going to pull it up. So
yeah. So that was on TV at the restaurant we were eating in. And it was one of those things where it was like a whole extended family. So it was one of those things where we went out to eat, and it took like 2 hours to eat because, you have 20 people, and so the food comes slow, and you get your kids doing this. And I was engrossed with it. And it was a good version. So then years later, when my family finally got cable, which was late 80s, because we actually moved to town, and because we lived 8 miles out, couldn't get cable, moved to town, and my parents decided to spring for cable. I caught King Kong was going to come on. I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember seeing this when I was younger. And it was different because it was all black and white, but instantly the story sucked me in. And I got looking at it, and I'm like, this is better than the one in the 70s. Yeah. The story is just so good. And the one in the 70s was great. I mean, because it was one of those things that stuck in my head that got me watching monster movies. So the remake got me watching monster movies because I liked it so much. But then I watched the original one, and the original one just took me in.
It does. It sucks you in. The directors back then had a harder time.
Yeah.
And not that they don't have a hard time now, but we have so much technological stuff. Like, you can fix things in post. Oh, I'm gonna fix it in post. Like, you literally hear. That's why editing takes so long on these films nowadays, because they fix so much in post. They didn't do that back then. Plus, you got to think these movies, they did not have, like, they were filmed, edited, and released within months. It wasn't on set for a month at a time. These are short set life movies. And when I say that is, like, they literally film these within days. Weeks. If a movie was filmed for like months, it was a huge, huge, huge deal. And epics like The Wizard of Oz, like Gone with the Wind, of course took longer. But stuff like this, like the 1933 King Kong, I'm not sure. I should probably look that up, but I know it did not take nearly as long to film as these epics. And if you looked at the time frame now, you would be like, how did they come up with this movie in that time? So it's really interesting, and I'm glad you have that on your list too. Yeah.
Well, of course. I mean, how could you not have King Kong on there? I mean, because it's king.
I'm trying to find the movie, the King Kong movie from the 70s, and the only one that's pulling up is the movie from the 70s, and I don't want that one. I want the TV the TV one, but I can't find it. I will find it and we'll post it on.
Yeah. Anyway, I remember that, and that engrossed me. So that was one of the things that got me. So let me give you one of mine from the 30s, mid 30s here, but definitely one that caught the attention of people because of the acting and because we actually get to see people on the sea fighting, talking about Mutiny on the Bounty.
Yep.
Clark Gable, Charles Laughton again. He is in a lot of movies. Oh my gosh! But
that's the other thing. These actors did not like they rolled over those.
They did.
Yeah.
This is a great movie. It really kind of brings in the whole pirate and the seagoing movies. This really it is what launches that whole thing. With I mean, you couldn't have Pirates of the Caribbean today or anything else like that without this movie. This is a classic based off a novel that's fantastic in its own right.
Yeah.
So I love this movie. Go
ahead.
It has a special place in my heart just because it's such a cool movie, and there's so much character interaction and so much going on, and trying to figure out.
Don't know. They don't stop.
Yeah.
Your eyes. There's always something to watch. Yeah.
So anyway,
I love that. Clark Gable. I know when I read something once, and I think it because I read about old actors and stuff like that. But I remember reading something that Clark Gable went to Errol Flynn.
Yeah.
When he got this part to ask Errol Flynn help with sword fighting. Because
yes.
Errol Flynn, if you guys don't know who Errol Flynn is, we haven't actually brought him up very much. He was like silent movies. Him and Mary Pickford, huge. Basically, Mary Pickford was there's Errol Flynn. Mary Pickford was the America's sweetheart, and Errol Flynn was very much that person who was the action star of silent film.
Right.
He was the leading man to beat all leading men. He was friends with Charlie Chaplin, all of that stuff. But Errol Flynn played a pirate like nobody else.
Right.
He played a pirate like no one's business. And no, and I was like, 1935 Mutiny on the Bounty is beautiful. The visual of that movie, like you said, there's always something going on. And if you watch it, I actually suggest to watch it twice.
Yeah.
Because the first time you want to pay attention to the story and the acting, and then go back and watch it where you don't have to pay attention to the story as much, and just pick up these little things, because set decor and set sets were so important. They still are.
Yes.
You can like I said, CG stuff in there, and it's not like if you don't have the right picture or the right face and stuff. But they had set directors who literally went out and found every single piece of a set and a piece of clothing, and like for the costume directors and stuff, and all of those little things. And that's what I love about old movies is like you wouldn't have movies like Gone with the Wind without the costumes and without the props and stuff. And so I always suggest movies like that are very visually busy.
Right.
Go back and watch them after you've watched it and know the story. Go back and watch it and just find all these beautiful pieces that somebody meticulously placed right there. Right there. It has to be right there, and it's one of my favorite things. So I'm a nerd.
No, I'm with you. Well, I was a theater guy. So set development's extremely important for live theater.
Yes.
And being able to do stuff like this in the early days of film. I mean, yes, it's now the mid-30s, so film's been going on for a little while, but it's still very early in the process, and to be able to do these type of movies are amazing.
Right. And you got to think the 1930s when color really, really took off. They did have some colors in the 1920s. I think there are a few, but few and far in between. The movie theaters didn't have the capability to play colored movies,
right?
Which to me is outrageous to think of. But then you take movies like Gone with the Wind, just because we brought it up already, and if you took the color out of it, it has a different impact than with
right.
Those colors give you a tone and a feel for a movie, and before you could show those colors, it's very much The Wizard of Oz, and The Wizard of Oz is on my list, just because I think it is one of those movies that all kids should see. And so it's on my list, so I'll just go on and
Great.
it. It is very much the first part of The Wizard of Oz, and then when she steps out into Munchkinland.
Right. When she goes to Oz. Right.
And it's that. And I always tell people, and I don't think people quite understand, is this is one of the first blockbuster movies that had that kind of impact. And the reason it had that kind of impact is for many, many people, those vibrant colors had never been seen in a movie theater. They couldn't play movies at home. They didn't have TVs back then. Here's the other thing, guys. This is the craziness, okay? When we talk about people going to see movies in the 1920s and 1930s, they didn't have TVs.
Right.
So you go decades by watching movies that are black and white, and to you it's just fascinating because, oh my gosh, there's moving pictures. And then you go and see a movie like Gone with the Wind, which, had like beautiful colors and everything. Gone with the Wind is 1939. So is The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
Another one of mine on my list is also 1939. But it was a good year for movies. What can I say?
It was a great year for movies.
Right?
Oh my gosh, it was an amazing year for movies.
So many great movies came out in 1939. But imagine going to a movie theater as a kid, and maybe you've seen one or two movies that are like in your lifetime. In your life.
Right.
You don't get to watch TV. You don't even know what that is. So you read books, and books are black and white. And then you go and you see these black and white films, and then you go to see something like The Wizard of Oz, and it starts off just like every other black and white movie you've ever seen, and then she steps into Oz, and the ability to transport not just Dorothy, but all of America and all of the world from a black and white film to a color, and not just like muted colors, like vibrant, fun, colors. It's such an iconic thing. Every aspect of that movie, every color, the Tin Man and his silver, and that silver paint is terrible. Like, he got sick from that silver. But it's so iconic because it transported everyone who watched it from a black and white world that they'd been living in into color. And we see in color, but they couldn't before those times, before the 30s, they really couldn't film in color. You could photograph in color. Color photographs have been around for a while, but only very specific people did it.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It still is rare. It was still very rare to see a color photo before the 40s.
Yeah, because the technology wasn't there. So just when you watch The Wizard of Oz with your kids or grandkids or yourself or whoever it is, take a moment, and when she's flying around in the cyclone of a tornado, and then she's going to land, and it's going to be color, take a moment and put yourself in a place of someone who never saw color on a screen before. And that moment transports supported so many. And yes, there were colored films before that, but they weren't nearly as blockbustery.
Right.
And as
right.
like everyone went to see this movie. Everyone went to see Gone with the Wind. Everyone went to see Wizard of Oz. Those
Right.
movies were just like, they're still some of the top rated movies for like the grossing of all
Right.
time. That's a huge.
Well, I don't know if it still happens, but I remember every year Wizard of Oz would be on TV, and we would sit and watch it every year.
Yeah.
So
it's a big deal. And, you know, Judy Garland, I could probably make a list of just Judy Garland movies. Meet Me in St. Louis is one of my
yes,
favorites.
That's a great one. Yes.
And
also talked about in Watchmen, by the way.
Really? I'm going to have to watch Watchmen now. But Judy Garland is just one of my favorites. And that movie isn't even why. It's not even my favorite Judy Garland movie. It's just so iconic. It has to be mentioned.
Exactly. I completely agree.
So what's one of your next one?
All right. Oh yeah, my list is pretty extensive. So in some of them, you know, we've covered some of them together here. So I'm going to give you my number 6 on my list overall. Okay. 1931. We've already talked about it, but Bela Lugosi, iconic Dracula.
Yes.
So this movie takes the actual book and adapts it. Actually, it was adapted first into a play, and then the movie takes the play adaptation into the movie. But so it actually got permission, which is really interesting. You look at him versus this one. So very much a different style of vampire, where this one is very much the monster look. Well, Lugosi is more the dashing, now still monster, but very much the dashing villain there that makes you fall in love with him.
Yeah, but Bram Stoker wrote Dracula as a leading man. Yes,
he did. Yeah.
And yes, he's scary, and yes, he's a vampire, but he has a love interest in it.
Right.
That's a big thing. Like, that's a big thing. But Bela Lugosi is Lon Chaney, Bela Lugosi, Vincent Price. If you ever want to just get this girl happy, you just put some of them on, and I will watch it all day long.
Well, and Bela Lugosi goes on to be Dracula numerous times after this.
Yeah.
It's, you know, other roles with Dracula, but yeah, so that becomes the icon of what we consider a vampire is typically based on Bela Lugosi.
The voice. Okay, so before Bela
Lugosi
did Dracula, we had silent films with vampires. Of course, you mentioned one. But that you know, like seductive European voice, that is all because of Bela Lugosi. That is all because and so that like, you know, deep raspy kind of, you know, seduction in the voice and eyes. And Bela Lugosi was not an attractive man either. Lon Chaney and Bela Lugosi were not very attractive in my opinion. But he could do something with his eyes and emote even through the makeup and even through the and to the point that you were drawn in.
Yes.
It's iconic, and you have to have it on a list. You have to. So I'm glad you put it on your list.
Well, thank you. Well, it's interesting because I like my monster movies a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge horror movie just as a complete genre. Some horror, especially if it's very thrilling and intense, I like Alien is a great horror movie.
Yeah.
But because it gets me on the edge of my seat. But, you know, Jason and everything else.
You don't like the slasher movies.
I'm not a slasher guy, right?
You don't like gore and sex for just having gore and sex. Like that's what a slasher movie is. It's like
that's true, right? Yeah, that's right.
Storyline with it. You want
and I'm a writer. I like story.
I know.
So, but yes, so Bella, but it's interesting because a lot of these are early horror movies, or especially on the monster movies, on my list. So I find that fascinating because I'm like, these are things I really like. But it also taps into the mystical and the sci-fi and the fantasy side. That's all related there because it's all
Yeah.
impacting here. So
With those movies, with all the horror movies we mentioned, and of course the sci-fi movie we mentioned, none of those are all of those bring us to where we are in the sci-fi, the horror, the fantasy world that we can live in movies now. None of the movies that we
right.
are in those genres would look the same if these movies had never been made.
Right. Well, interestingly, also, and I forgot about this earlier. This movie with Dracula and the other ones, these all, the monster movies we've mentioned, all happened prior to the rating system or the. So Metropolis has nudity in it.
Oh,
Which,
yeah. It was
yeah. So
but it was a
yeah.
German movie.
But even then, you go and watch some of these movies. A lot of these movies have the first Tarzan movie has nudity in it.
Yeah. Well,
so when you go and look at these, they were before the not rating system. It was before the National Picture Association came in and made standards on what could happen. And so it's fascinating because some of the things I was reading about Dracula was, and a lot of the other ones included, you couldn't have made them after the National Picture Association came in and set their standards. These were all pre-standards and had to be.
They're pre-standards, and that's the other thing is none, like some of the movies we've listed are not like kid friendly, so don't go out and watch them with your kids. And that's the thing is people think old movies are have those standards and the morality, and they think that we've gone down in morality with entertainment. And the truth of the matter is we haven't.
Right.
Some of the older movies, some of the silent movies and early 30s movies had lots of nudity, sex, violence. All of those things were in there.
Right.
They were not. They were taken as entertainment, and they weren't taken as commentary on society for the most part. Back in that time. Now you can watch them, and they are commentaries on the society that the story was from, and the society that the story, when the story was released and the movie was released. So you can look back and you can see the shift in being more appropriate and like you said. But no, some of these movies, like the Lon Chaney Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it is very like it's not your like Disney Notre Dame, Hunchback of Notre Dame. Like,
right.
But so don't go there thinking you're gonna watch that. That's the thing. Don't go there thinking you're gonna watch that if you watch these movies.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to point out was that was, the standards came in and it came in, what, 35, 36, something like that, where a lot of the movies started going underneath the standards. But the ones before it, and most of the time, everything I've seen, it was done appropriately. It wasn't, you didn't just throw nudity in, have nudity, or you didn't just have blood. It all was based around your story.
Yes, it's the story. Right. There are a couple movies. Hedy Lamarr, one of her first movies, which
love Hedy Lamarr.
I love Hedy. One of her she's fully nude. I can't.
Well, that needs to be on my list.
She's fully nude, and I'm gonna say this, and so if you have children watching, please do not if you don't want to answer a question, don't let them watch this part. She physically, they show her climaxing in this movie, and I can't think of the name of it right off the top of my head, so let me look up this, because it is a beautiful movie though. It's called Ecstasy, and it's
Ecstasy. Oh, I've heard of that.
It's from 1933.
Okay.
It is a romantic drama. It's a really good movie. But it does show her climaxing. It was very controversial, to the point that Hedy Lamarr almost got blacklisted when she came, because it's a European movie. When she came over,
Right.
to America, she almost got blacklisted, to where they didn't want her in movies because she, and full frontal nudity. I'm not just talking about like full frontal nudity. But it was part of the story, and it wasn't thrown there just to be thrown in there. It wasn't thrown in there just to be controversial. It was part of the story. So, you know.
Right. Well, and that's what I've seen with most of this. So that is interesting, because she is a beautiful woman, but she is so smart. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Hedy Lamarr. If you guys don't know who Hedy Lamarr is, she's stunning. She's beautiful. She was an actress, but she was also a scientist and an inventor, and she helped us.
Yep.
War.
Yeah.
So she developed some stuff to help us war.
Well, we basically wouldn't have Wi-Fi as we know it without her.
Nope.
And there's a lot of other things too. She was very instrumental. Right, cell phone. She's very instrumental in developing a lot of technology that had not been developed at the time. And here is that's really funny. Can you imagine a modern day movie star also doing that? I mean, this is like this. Hearing her story makes me think of oh my gosh, I've lost his name. It's a cult classic from the 80s with
look how gorgeous she is. Seriously.
She is beautiful. She's a beautiful woman, and super intelligent. So anyway, I just she's amazing. So
you need to put that one on your list too, Professor, if you can find it.
All right.
But it's called Ecstasy. But no, it's wonderful. Just don't make sure Logan's not in the room.
Right.
Yeah,
no doubt.
So let's go to. I'm gonna go to one. I have two more on my list.
Yep.
This one is from 1939, and they've remade this movie 4 times that I know of. 2 of the times they cast it a little differently, but it's called The Women.
Yep.
Okay. And there it is. Norma Shearer, Joan Crawford, Rosalind Russell. The amazing thing about this movie, and if you can look down there on the cast, there are no men.
Right. Which is incredible for that time frame.
Oh my God! It was an amazing feat. It was also 1939. Like I said, amazing movies came out in 1939. This one has been done. It was done more modern with Meg Ryan. I think it was still called The Women. I'm not sure, but they've remade it modernly. But they did one with June Allison and everything. But it is just a beautiful. Norma Shearer plays a woman who's getting a divorce in a time when you did not get a divorce, and
right.
About gossip, and it's about trusting basically your friends, and it is the story is very much about women empowerment, and that is
right.
1939 did not happen, and about women being you were getting a divorce, you're still okay.
Right.
You feel what you want to feel. You don't need a man. You don't.
Right.
You can always depend on your friends, and there's just so many storylines that go through it. It is funny, like it is a comedy, but with some serious points. And if you're a feminist or a humanist, like I am a humanist, I believe all humans are equal. I don't, girls, guys, any gender you want to call yourself, I don't care. You're a human, and I'm going to treat you that way. But it is very much, if you watch it, and you think about the time frame that it came out, the story is great. The visually, it's beautiful. They go to Reno, and that's fun because that's where you had to go. There was a time when you couldn't get divorced in like, they're from New York. You couldn't get divorced in the state of New York. You had to go out to Reno, Nevada, and live there for a month and get a divorce. It tackles
just
that.
crazy, but yeah.
I know. It tackles that. It tackles the custody. It tackles co-parenting. It tackles all of those things, and the intricate web that females and female friends have, which it's hard to explain the intricacy of it all, but it is a beautiful story. I like the June Allison one. I think it came out in the 40s too. I don't know if it's called in. I think it's called something else, but it's the same story. The Meg Ryan came out, I want to say like 15 years ago. It's the same story. They just modernized it where she's a fashion designer. She's not just a housewife. But no, it is truly a great movie. And I just feel like people don't realize it. When the Meg Ryan movie came out, everybody was like, oh my gosh, it's so great. They have this movie and you don't see the men hardly at all. Like, you see them in passing.
Right.
But you don't.
I've seen a version of this, but I've not seen the original. So I am interested in seeing that. It's on my list.
Rosalind Russell, like, seriously, ba 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 boom, that woman. Oh, seriously, like, you don't realize how, and all these women get together, and they're all so beautiful, and it's just amazing. I really, really love that movie. If you guys haven't seen it, go see it or rent it or find it. I used to watch it on Turner Classic Movies when it would come on. So I know HBO Max has Turner Classic Movies, like part of it, and I'm like, I have not gone through that yet.
Well, there's a lot to watch, so yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
One?
Oh yeah, I've got some more still. So let's get on some of these here. So sticking in the idea of that Larry likes his monster movies. The Mummy. That movie is freaking amazing.
I agree with you. What year did that one come out?
The Mummy came out in 1932. And the really interesting thing is a lot of the original story as a whole is done in the Brendan Fraser remake.
Yes.
A lot of it's not completely the same, but there's a lot of aspects to it. They took a lot of it there. Tom Cruise didn't really keep anything, but and again, he didn't write the movie. He just acted in it.
Every episode you bring that man up.
I don't know. He's in a lot of movies.
I can't.
Anyway.
You know what? I don't hate all his movies. I'm going to throw that out there. There are some Tom Cruise movies that I really enjoy. I just do not like him.
No, I understand. So, yeah, the Egyptian Prince and Hotep, where Bubba Hotep comes from, is based off of this movie.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah.
I mean, it's
yeah.
You can't go wrong with them. I had some Vincent Price movies that I wanted to put on my list, but I didn't. I'm like, and that's the thing, you guys. How hard it is to narrow down movies like this. When I've seen so many movies and I love movies so much, it's a very difficult thing to do. But no, I love that pick. I love my monsters.
The Mummy is just such an iconic movie. Boris Karloff, who continues to play in those. I mean, and those eyes are just killer. I love that. Yeah.
So like Lon Chaney, Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, Vincent, you can't go wrong. You
Right.
can't. Vincent Price, I remember watching him like with like the Edgar Allan Poe movies.
Yes.
So that man creeped me out, but in the most wonderful way. Like,
Right.
I was like, I want to meet him, but I don't. Like, as a
Right.
child, I wanted to meet him. It scared me. Such a, like, they're such masters of those monsters and they all have, like we were talking about Bela Lugosi looking at you and seducing you with his eyes, even though he's not an attractive man, and and all of his stuff. And Boris Karloff can do the same thing. He can give you this layer that is just chills you. Vincent Price has those eyes that are like, they draw you in and then they give you that glare. It's a weird thing. It's kind of like a Bela Lugosi meets Boris Karloff in Vincent Price's eyes. Like, he like really sweet and draw you in, and then he's like.
Vincent Price's voice is iconic too. I mean, his voice in Thriller made Thriller so much better, and that was a cool song and great video. But Vincent Price, and I figured that, I wanted to throw in some Vincent Price also. I'm figuring in the 40s we'll probably have some Vincent Price pop up there. So, but but yes, it is really hard to narrow them down. Yeah,
it's so hard, you guys. Like, it's so weird because you think it's going to be easy. You're like, right, 5 or 10 movies from a decade. Like, that's not hard. It is beyond hard when you watch so many movies.
Right.
I know there are people who could pick 10 movies from the 1930s and 1940s because they've only seen 10 movies from the 1930s and 1940s.
Well, it probably a lot of them haven't even seen that. So
I know. I was going through. So what I did is I actually went on, and this is going to sound weird, but there's like on IMDb where you can like look up what movies came out what year.
Yeah.
And I pulled up all these movies that came out like 1930, 1931, 1932. And I wrote down a bunch of them, and then I narrowed that down and I narrowed that down. My problem with it is I was going through them, and she was like, well, I mean, you couldn't have seen all of those. And in the 1930s, I think there was like 9 movies on the list that I hadn't seen.
Right.
All the other movies. You know how hard that is?
That's you've seen more of those than I have. I've seen a lot of 40s and 50s, and I've seen some 30s and a little bit of 20s, and I've got a list of more to see. But yeah, so I do bow to your ability to watch a lot of those, and I know a lot of that was in your younger days too, when you had a little more time.
I was a kid, and I was a nerdy girl who stayed at home because nobody would ask me on dates. So I was just a homebody watching old movies with my grandma. Like,
I get it. Well, and it's a fun thing to do. Now, here's we got a picture of one. I think it was from your list, and I don't think you mentioned it. So let me throw this up here.
This is my favorite movies from the 1930s of all time, and it's actually Myrna Loy. That's Myrna Loy, and then William Powell. It's a series of movies. It's not just one movie. It's a series of movies, and it is called the Thin Man series. There's the Thin Man. Let's see. I have them. Hold on just a second. Okay, you can take that picture down because I got to show you this. So this is my Thin Man series. I own all of them on DVD. So there's the Thin Man, After the Thin Man, Another Thin Man, The Shadow of the Thin Man, The Thin Man Goes Home, the Song of the Thin Man, and then there's this particular one came with a wonderful documentary about Myrna Loy and William Powell called Alias Nick and Nora. So Nick and Nora are a husband and wife team. Nick is a detective. Nora is a housewife, socialite. But let's face it, he could not solve any of his mysteries without her.
That's true.
They have a dog. They live in a really fancy apartment. they are just wonderful. And the comedy and connection between the two.
Right.
Basically, in the 90s, people did the Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. You know, they the couple that like people were like they have such great chemistry together on screen. Not gonna lie, Myrna Loy and William Powell has more. They are, you truly believe that they are a married couple who love each other and hate each other at the same time, because that's how marriage works. But these movies are just, they're beautiful. The costumes are beautiful. Myrna Loy is, it's probably one of the most stunning women I've ever seen on screen. She's not your classic beauty. She is, you can tell she's sarcastic and funny and like mouthy, probably cursed like a sailor in real life. I'm not even gonna lie. But she's beautiful, girl next door. And she's played in several movies that I really love. One with she played with Shirley Temple, where she was Shirley Temple's sister in one of her movies when she was a teenager. But this series is, if you love film noir, but with comedy, like not quite as dark, with mysteries and murders, and you have to solve them, and you know all of that stuff. This series is phenomenal. It's screwball romance meets mystery, and that to me, it has undertones of Agatha Christie, but you know, really weird punchlines and some amazing physical comedy. Like Nick falls so many times in these movies, like he trips over the carpet.
Right.
It's very much kid friendly, these movies. There's nothing inappropriate in these movies whatsoever. It was one of my mom's favorites. And I bought that whole set for her before she passed away, like the year she passed away, and then I got it when she passed away. But they are so phenomenal. They are written with wit and satire, and but they're still a mystery, and they're still romance, but it's not the kind of romance that's like music swelling and heart skipping a beat. It's like she talks about, you know, his pajamas, and they just they work off each other so well. I truly believe that Myrna Loy and William Powell are one of the best couples, like that weren't a couple, but Hollywood pairings of a couple that's ever the silver screen. William Powell he's played in a lot of other movies. He's a wonderful actor, but when he's on screen with Myrna Loy, something happens to that man, because he's very prim and proper in most of his roles.
Right.
And he tries to be prim and proper in his role as Nick. It doesn't translate as prim and proper. It translates as like really screwbally and and in love with his wife, but in a weird way. It's beautiful. If you guys haven't seen it, please find them. The Thin Man is the first one, but you know, find any of them. They make sense in order, but you can watch them out of order, and there's still, each individual is a really good story. And you got to think this is the 1930s. So like I'm trying to think of when all these came out. I know 34, the first one came out. Let's see here. Song of the Thin Man. If I can find it on these things. I really don't.
I know I've seen The Thin Man, and I may have seen a couple of the others, but I don't know off the top of my head if I've seen them all. But I definitely have seen The Thin Man. So yeah.
The Thin Man came out in 1934.
Yeah.
The Song of the Thin Man, which is the very last one, came out in 1947. 13-year span.
Right.
Is a huge thing.
It is.
Sequels were not something that you did.
Right.
If you ever watch or listen to the serial radio shows from like the early 20s, like The Shadow and Little Orphan Annie and stuff like that, these are filmed very much like those are spoken.
Right. Right.
And they're serial. It's a serial story, but it's beautiful. And okay, so I'm just going to read this because I think that this is kind of what I've said. This was written by on the MGM story in 1934 about Myrna Loy and William Powell. And it was like nothing quite like this relationship had ever been screened before. Critics and customers were totally captivated by the on-screen romance. Like, that's a big thing. We had romance, but it's really not a romance like you think of it. So these movies are my absolute favorite movies from the 1930s. And it goes into the 40s, but just I love them. I'm glad you've seen one of them, or at least one or two of them, Professor.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say I know I've seen this picture right here. I'm like, yeah, I've seen that movie. So, and I know I've seen some of them because I've enjoyed them. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is and you're right. It's film noir, but not to the full extent. It's pulled back just slightly.
It's like I Love Lucy meets film noir.
Yeah.
It's very much like that. It's screwball mystery with romance and comedy, and it's beautiful. But yeah, they're like my favorite movie couple ever.
Right.
Is those two, and that's saying a lot. Like I just told you guys, I've seen all but 9 movies that came out in 1930. Like I've seen a lot of movies, but their relationship and their on-screen chemistry is just so beautiful and so effortless. You know what I'm talking?
Yes.
Effortless.
Yes, I agree. So
yeah.
Let's. So I've got some more. I'm just going to throw up and just briefly mention them because we really need to wrap up because we're an hour and a half almost. So and that's to be expected. So put this up earlier. Robin Hood, The Adventures of Robin Hood. That movie, I just love it. It's a fun action movie. There's nothing real intense about it. It's just a fun action movie. It's just
from the first action hero ever.
Right. Exactly.
First action hero ever. We wouldn't have. Yeah, I like it.
So we've got that, and at some point we should look at serials. By the way, because we didn't really go into those, because there's some really interesting movies during this time period that are serial movies where you don't get one movie. You got to go to the movie theater every week to get the next episode.
Yes.
So here is from, let's see, from 1939, another one that is an amazing movie. I know, that's what I'm saying. I looked at that 39. I'm like, I could make a whole list just on 39. But yeah. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Of course. It almost made my list, but I already had 3 1939s, and I'm like, oh my God.
I understand that.
See, Jimmy Stewart, you got to love him. That movie is politically still means something. If you
look
to politics, you should see this movie.
Yes.
It translates to today, and he is one of my favorite actors. He's like up there just because I fell in love with him with he had a small role in a movie with Lana Turner and Hedy Lamarr and Judy Garland, and it was called the Ziegfeld Girls, and he played Lana Turner's boyfriend, and I fell in love with him from that moment on. But he is it's an amazing movie. So I love that movie. So
Yeah, that is such an incredible movie. It is very political, but not in a one side is bad, but really kind of calling out politics for what it really ends up becoming and what it should not be. How you're supposed to go to Washington to help people, and that's not what happens.
It's basically calling out the corruption.
Yeah.
The system is, and not any political party. It is not politically affiliated with any party.
Right.
Literally just talking about how it should be one thing and it's not because of the corruption, and how an idealistic man goes thinking that it's going to be this helpful thing, and he finds out it's not. It's the opposite of the Eddie Murphy movie where he runs for.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. Well, and the interesting thing is, I have actually seen some videos of people in the last 10 years on both parties that have gotten elected into Congress thinking they were going there to help. And just like, I don't even know if I want to run because, this is such a game and it really doesn't help people. And then it reminds me of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I mean, it calls right back to it. I'm like, this is still true today. People that are trying to help find that they can't help because of how corrupt the system is. So, and that's all we're going to say about politics, other than we hope you've enjoyed tonight more than you enjoyed the debate. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I posted a couple of funny things about it, how it was worse than watching Twilight. So, so anyway, another one that I've got on my list is, again, back to the monster movies, The Invisible Man.
The Invisible Man. Such a wonderful idea of a movie. It still is. It's not been done very well, like a lot.
And there was a new one a year or two ago, and I actually enjoyed it. It's not this. This movie is great. I actually saw this movie on Spenguli a few weeks ago and sit and watch the whole thing because it is so well done. It's so fun.
It is. It's monster, but without being monster.
Right, exactly.
The conflict of a person. It's a very Jekyll and Hyde type of.
It is.
And Jekyll and Hyde, I told you 1920 Jekyll and Hyde with John Barrymore was like on my list.
Yes.
It's very much like that, except instead of turning into a monster, you turn invisible.
Right.
Because that gives you more power.
It can.
Turning into a monster gives you less power. People think that monsters have more power, but they have less power. But turning invisible gives you more.
Well, because as a monster, you don't have any control. You turn the monster, you don't have any control. You turn into the werewolf, which is a great movie. You turn into the werewolf, then the werewolf's in charge and you're not. But being invisible, you're still in charge. You can just do things without being seen. And finally on my list, the last one I'm going to bring up here, this one has to be mentioned. Again, this is 1937, not 1939.
7 had some good movies too. 39, I don't even know how they picked the Academy Awards on 39.
I'm with you completely. So, 39 is just amazing. But the first full-length animated movie, Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, do I watch this movie and think, man, this is just incredible? I've seen it so many times, and Disney style, everything else. But for the time, to make an animated movie that was full length, and how beautifully well done this movie is for 1937, it's an incredible feat. And basically put Disney on the path to be the mega group that they are today.
Well, and you got to think about it this way. It is basically one of I think it might be the first what we would consider full-length children's movie ever.
Right. I think it is, yes.
I mean, there could be shows that I'd say that, but then there's shows like Shirley Temple.
Right.
shows that were very toward children, but they were like an hour long. Like movies were shorter back then too, except for your epics. This one is not, but it is such an iconic. It's like the first Batman comic book.
Right.
Oh, it's the first of its kind, and that's the thing. Things. A lot of the ones we've talked about tonight are the first of their kind. First horror movie, first sci-fi movie, first full-length animated movie. I think the reason we have them on our list is because not only are they the first, but they still translate.
Right.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is, my granddaughters love that movie.
Right.
Like,
right.
You know, I don't think my stepdaughter does as much. She's more into horror stuff, or she was. But you know, I have these in my living room.
Oh,
I know.
Doc and Dopey.
This tells you something about my childhood. But the thing is like, these are still being made into toys. These I bought last year. Doc and Dopey and their pops. Yes, Disney has a way of like prolonging the life of like all their characters by, you know, Disney fighting everything.
Right.
Do you think that these characters would, if somebody else would have put it out, they wouldn't maybe not as been as in your face all the time, because Disney's great at that. And not saying anything bad about it. It's massively intelligent marketing on their part. But these characters are so iconic, and they have, you know what I'm talking about. They have such special place in your heart when you're a kid.
Right.
And for a child in the 30s, I just can't even imagine. Like, you go to see movies, and their movies, one, that's magical. But then you go and see a cartoon. Like, I don't think people realize how far we've come in 100 years.
Right.
Like 100 years ago, we didn't have TV. We didn't have we didn't have like the movie blockbusters like that we do now. We didn't have CGI. We didn't have streaming. We didn't have computers. We didn't have phones. We didn't have all this. We couldn't have done this. Basically, the entertainment industry, movies in particular, are in such a dire strait right at the moment. And that's really sad to me, because without those groundbreaking things like Snow White, the Seven, you wouldn't have half the stuff you have now. And that's just, yeah, you have to bring that up. I'm not unhappy with your choices tonight.
Well, thank you. I don't think usually you're unhappy with them, but I don't know.
Sometimes I disagree with them.
Well, you know, especially.
Professor and I are usually very close, or we have things that are similar, like two of the ones on his list are on my list, and then we have the one that didn't quite make my list but did, like it's right there, you know that.
Very true.
We need people on here who disagree with us more.
Well, you know, when we're right. So, so do you want to do the 40s next week?
Yeah. Oh, can we do 40 to 45? Because
yes.
It's too much. Well, because 1940 alone has like 7 movies that I love. Rebecca, one of them.
Yeah, well, you know, that makes my list. So.
I know, it has to make your list. So why don't we do 1940 to 1945, and then we'll do 45 to 49, or
46 to 50.
Why don't we do 40 to 44, and then 45 to 49?
We can do that.
Yeah.
40 to 44. Okay, very good. That'll be interesting. And I guarantee there's going to be at least a Humphrey Bogart movie on my list.
You love Humphrey Bogart.
I do. Bogey is my guy.
I like Humphrey Bogart. I don't love Humphrey Bogart.
That's okay. That's okay.
but there are several people that I do love. Like I so many people should have made my list. Olivia de Havilland made Gone with the Wind on there, but not quite. And I know she plays in Rebecca. So many great movies. And Betty Davis has so many great movies in that time frame.
She does, yes.
And pick any Betty Davis movies from the 30s, and it killed me.
We can't have a list of 80 on it. That's the problem.
I know. So that's why we're narrowing it down to 4 years instead of 10 years.
Oh my gosh. Well, actually, 40 and 44 is 5 years, so that'll be all right.
That's true. But
yeah, it's yeah.
It's a little.
Well, we'll do that. We'll do that next week. We'll have a good time with it. Unless, of course, something else huge comes up or somebody wants to join us or something like that, then we'll probably push it back a week or something. But we will get that on here. So I'll actually probably go in and start making my list.
Anybody who's watching and wants to come up with a list in 1940 to 1944 and wants to join us, so just
please do.
Because we would love that. And
yeah.
we love it when you guys come on here with us and stuff like that. And I know Facebook, when I logged in here, it said Facebook was having a little bit of issues with stuff. So I'm not sure when everybody's going to get to see this and everything. But guys, know that we love it when you interact. And if you have interacted, know that there is a technical problem with Facebook and StreamYard connecting somehow tonight. And we were aware of this when we came on. And so if you have messaged us or commented, and that's why we haven't pointed those out yet, because they're not showing up.
Right. Because I've been checking comments just to make sure. We did have a couple of people watching us live for a while, which we do appreciate. We love when you guys watch us live. We love it when you comment. So hopefully Facebook and StreamYard will get that all worked out so we can have that smooth next week. But thank you guys for watching. Let us know in the comments if we missed anything that you think we should have talked about. They're like, how could you leave this off? It sometimes that happens. So
plus Larry's making his list. Don't forget,
I am
a list of movies to watch, and I could give him all the movies to watch. But yeah.
Well, I'm going to send you my list when we're done because I want you to look at it, and then you can always say, well, how about this one? Have you seen this? So because there are things that I've seen that I enjoyed that didn't make the list,
right.
But then there were things that I'm looking at movies going, oh, I've heard of that. And I'm researching it more going, I need to watch that. What have I been doing with my life?
That's the problem, guys. I watch movies a lot now even, but not like when I was a teenager stuck at home.
Right.
Literally, that's what I did for fun. I watched movies. And so I've watched, lots and lots of movies. I think my least watched movie decades is the 1970s.
Oh yeah.
Like the classics, and to her, because I was born in the 70s, so to her, 70s weren't classics. So
right.
That's the decade I have the least amount of movie viewing in. But then I was raised in the 80s, so I watched all the movies that came out in the 80s. So that part's not hard. So I think that's going to be my more.
That list would be hard to narrow down. The 80s. Oh my gosh.
We would have to do like 80s John Hughes movies. 80s.
Or 1980. What happened here? 1981. Or something. I don't know because I'm looking at
doing these lives twice a week now, and for the next 5 years.
We might. I don't know. I just know that people start talking about 80s movies, and I can just start rattling them off. And I'm like, well, these are my core ones I love, but these are the cult classics that I love. Well, how can you leave this off the list? Well, how's this over here? I'm like, oh my gosh.
Shmoo loves 80s movies too, and I was talking about a movie, and I was talking about this movie with Leah Thompson and Victoria Jackson and Andrew Dice Clay. Do you know what movie I'm talking about?
I can see it in my head. What's the name of it?
It's called Casual Sex. And
yes.
And I tried to talk my mom into letting me watch this movie just because of the name of it. It has not it's not bad. But I was talking about it, and they talk about sex a lot. But I was talking about, and she was like, Andrew Dice Clay is a as a leading man type of person, and he's like, I think I've seen it, but I don't know, and he can't remember this movie, and I own it on DVD, and so I'm hoping like this week sometime we watch it because it's hilarious. So
Yeah, I remember that movie. I've seen that movie. And Leah Thompson is amazing. By the way, did you see her quote from today? She posted today.
No, I've been at work all
So earlier, Mark Hamill posted a quote about last night's debate that said, "That was the worst thing I've seen, and I was in the Star Wars Holiday Special." Leah Thompson replies an hour later and says, "That was the worst thing I've ever seen, and I kissed a duck." For Howard the Duck.
I love Howard the Duck. Don't get that.
Howard the Duck is weird and crazy. It's the first Marvel movie, and it's horrible, but kind of in a good way. Right. And Leah Thompson, so can't go wrong with that. But I saw that and went, okay, yeah, that actually trumps over the holiday special. Is I kissed a duck. Okay, yeah.
Duck.
I made out with a duck. I think that's what it said. I made out with a duck.
She did make out with a duck. It was creepy.
She did.
It was that movie that it was fine until they start making out. Like, no. No.
It's bizarre.
No. He's a duck.
Well, and then to realize you've got a Marvel movie with nudity. Because the very first of the movie, when he gets yanked out of Duck World, they show a female topless duck. And I'm like... Apparently
in his world, female topless ducks have huge breasts.
Exactly.
I don't know.
So when you get breast meat, that's what you're... I mean, yeah.
Every time I watch that movie, though, I just think Mr. Rooney from, like, Ferris Bueller, because, you know, he...
Yes.
And I just think to myself, what did this guy do? He just always plays this person who I just hate so much.
Exactly.
Oh my god. Oh, we just spent like 5 minutes talking about nothingness. This is.
I know. Well, hopefully people have enjoyed that because we're having a good time with it. So, but yes. So next week. 40 to 44, unless there's something major that comes up, and we'll do that, and we'll keep doing this on and off. I'm sure we're going to mix some other things in. We probably need to start talking about movies coming to theaters because some are getting released, but some are getting pushed back, and
some are getting pushed back.
Unfortunately, some of them are coming out though, so it's interesting to kind of, I don't know, it's a weird time. And it looks like second part of the comeback for the coronavirus is back on the rise for a lot of us. So Springfield hospitals are maxed out with COVID patients.
Yeah, you live in a hot spot. We do.
Yeah.
Hot spot is like more than ours, but we both live in Southwest Missouri, and Southwest Missouri is terrible right now.
Yeah. So, well, considering I had COVID last week, I survived though, thank God. So.
I thought I had it the week before.
You did.
Bronchitis. And bronchitis.
Bronchitis sucks too. So
terrible. And I had all of the symptoms of COVID except for like the non-tasting and non-smelling.
Right. And I never had that either.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. So I was really stressed. But barring any major things happening in entertainment that we need to talk about, or comics, or our geeky world that we need to talk about, next week we'll talk about our favorite picks from 1940 to 1944. Please stay tuned to watch it, and maybe you'll get some gems and stuff, because I have some really obscure ones from those years. So
I'm looking forward to seeing that list. So, all right. So, all right, guys, thanks for joining us again. Well, let's talk about our friends, because we've got friends that do similar things to this. We do. Friends are good. There were times I think both of us wondered if we had friends when we were younger.
My anxiety tells me I don't. So you guys are good. Thank you.
Well, I'm your friend, and I love you.
He's like
So anyway, but yes, but we've got friends out there doing similar things. So we've got Keith and Gary out there at Pop Culture Minefield. They're not funny. They're not PG, but they're hysterical, and they have some really awesome people they interview. They get into the scoop, and they get scoops from Nikki Sutton, who is notorious for bringing in scoops of knowing things that months ahead of other people. So check out their stuff.
When they tell us something's going to happen, we listen to it. So yeah, check them out over at Pop Culture Minefield on YouTube. They're also on Facebook as well. But they do videos, on their YouTube on a regular and everything. So go check them out because they're awesome.
Yep.
Tell them we said hi.
Exactly. Tell them we're not famous like they are because they've become a little more famous. But tell them that we said hi because they know who we are. So.
But I'm cuter.
This is true.
Not.
You are cuter than either Gary or even Keith. So Keith's pretty adorable, but you're way past him. So
when he starts laughing, it's the cutest thing ever. I'm not even gonna lie. I listen to all day. It's hilarious. So go check out our friends Tim and Josh over at Nerd Informants. They are on Facebook and YouTube, and they are doing a podcast. They put it on their Facebook, so you can go listen to them on podcast as well. And they bring you all kinds of nerdy news, movie reviews when movies do come out. And they did the reviews for the movies that have been released so far, and just all kinds of fun things. They're gamers and stuff. So maybe I'm hoping we can get a video of Tim getting scared at a scary movie because Tim did a scary movie. So
maybe one of the ones we just talked about. Maybe we show him something from the 20s.
The 20s. That might be because he gets really scared of like he doesn't like scary movies at all. So maybe we could try to convince him to watch something like that with us. That would be fun. So
that would be fun.
They're awesome. They're great guys. And go give them a like and a hi and everything. So, and then go check out the Scallywag over at Scallywag Productions on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. That's Spoo himself, and he hasn't posted anything since his 24 live stream, but that's because I got sick and he was taking care of me. So
that's good for him. Good job.
Yeah. So, but I think some things are coming up for him, and he's going to be doing some things very soon. But go check him out, and if you have any questions ever about any horror movies ever made, that is the man to go to. So go give him a like. And when I say this, go give them likes on Facebook, but also subscribe on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. That helps us out so much. And check us out on GeekyKOOL.com. We have our own website, but we're also on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, and you're probably watching us on one of those. But yeah, go check us out. Professor writes all kinds of articles. I wish I was writing more. I just don't have time right now, and I feel really bad about it.
Don't feel bad. Just, when you get a chance, we'd love to have, because your geeky girlness perspective is missed when it's not with us. So yes. And as you said, that subscribe button, and of course the little bell, click on that bell for your notifications. That's very important. That helps us be able to tell Facebook people like us, and then Facebook actually starts doing things like putting ads that help us out and stuff eventually. And so maybe, who knows?
That you guys like what we're doing, and that's
we do.
None of the people we've mentioned get monetary payment for these things. We do this because we love it, and because we love the geeky world and entertainment world and all of that. And so please give us a like or subscribe or say hi or say good job, or if you have criticism, that's fine too. Just talk to us about it and stuff. We're always open to what everybody wants to hear and see and stuff, and we would like to do that for you. So let us know.
Yeah, most definitely. Even if you want to write a response, if you want to put something geeky out that you haven't had a chance to put out, you want to put that on our site, give us a drop. If you want to be one of our regular contributors, either video or writer, let us know, because we're always looking for people to come in and help add some content, give a different geek perspective on
PG, guys. Or PG.
Basically all I care about is if if I had an 8-year-old kid with me that's trying to look at something, am I going to be embarrassed that it pulls up? And that's really kind of where I'm at. So
well, he did, like, I did a Starlight calendar a couple, or star. Yeah, I did a calendar a couple years ago. It was not too inappropriate, but there was some really sexy pictures, and he promoted it. So
oh yeah,
we will keep that up there. But yeah, if you guys want to contribute, we would love that. If you want to join one of our lives, let us know. We love having other people on here. Professor and I get along really well and everything, and we enjoy talking, and I hope you guys enjoy listening. But having somebody else on here sometimes gives us a different point of view. So
most definitely. And if you have something you need to promote, if you're writing a book, if you're drawing something cool, let us know.
I do have something, actually. I'm going to find it. I want to get this name right. I have a friend who, I have a couple friends, actually. Damon is the director and I think the writer of this new film that they're putting together here in Branson. And Michelle Deck, a friend of mine, is a singer-songwriter, and one of her songs is going on the soundtrack.
Very nice.
And it is called Pray They Stand Down. And it is, there's the thing on it. They're doing a Kickstarter for it and everything. They already have a lot of it done and stuff, but I will put a link in the thing. But I was asked if I could talk about it a little bit, and they're just such a great group. And it's basically, it's a movie that's going to be helping with PTSD for
great
for our military, and it's based on that. So if you guys, I'll post that in on our Facebook underneath here, and so you guys can check that out and stuff and help them if you want. And but they're a great group, and it's local, and they're just a great bunch of artists and stuff like that doing that. So
well, send me that information. I will see if I can get their Kickstarter posted, and maybe see if we can get one of them come on and talk about it, because that would be a great thing for our show, is to have one of them come on and talk about what's going on and how people can help.
Cool. Awesome. I will let them know that. I'm sure they would be thrilled with that. So
perfect. Yeah, that's always a great use of our resource, I think. So anytime we can do something like that promotes other local people, which I think is fantastic, and then it's going for a good cause like PTSD. Man, that's needed, because there's some intense stuff that happens in war. War is not a light thing. It does damage to people that have to go through it. So
yeah, and so I think the project is really good. It sounds really cool and really fundamentally important. So
I agree.
I'll post that for you guys and go check them out. Also, one of our staff writers just got another book published, and so go check her out as well.
And hopefully we'll have her on soon. We had her on a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and you weren't able to be on with us, but hopefully we can have you both on, because that way I'm outnumbered. I always like that. So.
You just want to be surrounded by pretty girls.
I do. That's always my thing. I'm not going to deny that people are like, they're always like, well, don't you want to go hang out with the guys? Are you kidding? They smell bad. Whatever. Give me the pretty girls. I'm hanging there.
Oh, that's cute. Ashley's very pretty. So leave it at that one. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week. We'll try not to go over this much unless we do get some special guests who want to come in and talk about some stuff, and then we can never tell how far we'll go over. But yeah, it happens.
It does. That's all right. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. Have a great day. Stay geeky, and we'll talk to you next week.